Have you ever felt like you're constantly chasing something? A sense of peace, a purpose, maybe even a feeling of being whole. We wake up, strive, hustle, achieve, and yet that quiet voice inside keeps whispering, something's still missing. So naturally, the question arises, what happens when you finally reach enlightenment? Is it like fireworks going off, an out-of-body vision, or maybe a heavenly voice saying, you've made it? The Buddha's answer was far simpler and far more beautiful. He said it's not about gaining something, it's about letting go. Letting go of the idea that you were ever broken. Letting go of the belief that you need to become someone better. Letting go of the grasping, the reaching, the running in circles. Enlightenment isn't a trophy or a spiritual medal. It's the moment when the chasing stops. And in that stillness, you realize you were never missing anything. You were already whole. You just didn't know it. Like someone searching everywhere for their glasses, only to find them resting on their head the whole time. Maybe enlightenment isn't a destination after all. Maybe it's the feeling of finally coming home, not to a place, but to yourself. So, what does enlightenment actually feel like? It's not a grand moment, let's just show it. It's not light bursting through the clouds or angels singing in the background. Retrate it more ordinary. And that's what makes it so profound. Imagine this. You've been clenching your jaw for years without noticing. Then one day, something softens, and you just let go. And that's enlightenment. Or think of walking through life wearing sunglasses indoors, where you've been wondering why everything feels dim, heavy, and then you take them off and realize it was never the room. It was your lens. Enlightenment feels like that. A quiet unburdening, in not gaining something new, but releasing what you never needed. And suddenly, there's space, and not in the world outside, but in your mind. You no longer cling to ideas or rush to understand everything. The pressure to figure it all out fades like a knot slowly untying itself. Even the voice in your head, the one narrating every moment, every judgment, every fear, begins to fall silent. Not because you forced it, but because it's no longer needed. Emotions still come. Of course they do. Anger, joy, sadness, they still rise. But now they flow through you like wind through an open field. No longer my anger or my joy, just experiences passing through. This isn't detachment. It's intimacy without control. It's feeling everything deeply, but without clinging. And that's the quiet revolution of awakening. And not something added, but something unnecessary falling away, until only truth remains. So now you might be wondering, if enlightenment is waking up, then what exactly is nirvana? They're often used together, almost interchangeably. But in truth, they point to different parts of the same path, like two stages of the same homecoming. Enlightenment is the moment you wake up. The illusion falls away. You see clearly, maybe for the first time, how you've been lost in the dream. It's that shift in awareness, sudden or gradual, where you realize, oh, I'm not who I thought I was, and life isn't what I thought it had to be. But nirvana? Nirvana is what remains once the fire has gone out. The fire of craving, of anger, of ignorance. It's the peace after the storm, the stillness after you've stopped trying to control everything. If enlightenment is the door swinging open, nirvana is the quiet step through. The Buddha never described nirvana as a place, not heaven, not paradise. He called it the unborn, the unmade, the unconditioned. Something not created but always there, like the sky behind the clouds. And here's the beautiful paradox. There's no you who reaches nirvana. Because by the time you arrive, the idea of you is already gone. It's like rain falling. We say, it's raining, but we don't ask, who is the rain? It just is, in the same way. Awakening isn't something you possess. It's something that happens when there's no one left to possess it. No struggle, no achievement. Just the effortless peace that comes when there's nothing left to fight for. Enlightenment isn't just a Buddhist idea. The yearning to wake up, to return to something deeper, older, more whole. It runs through every culture, every tradition, like a quiet river beneath all our stories. In Hinduism, the sages speak of Aham Brahmasmi, I am the absolute, not as an ego trip, but as the realization that the self you thought was small, separate, and struggling was never apart from the infinite. Like a wave discovering it was always ocean, you were never alone. You were never less than divine. In Islamic Sufism, the mystics talk about fana, the complete dissolution of the self in divine love. They describe it not as a loss, but as a merging, like a drop of water falling into the sea, not to disappear, but to realize it was never separate to begin with. And in Christian mysticism, we hear about surrendering the personal will so that only the divine remains. Saints and seekers speak of dying to the self so that Christ lives through me, not as a death in the harsh sense, but like falling asleep in the arms of love itself. Even in Taoism, enlightenment is not about transcendence, but about flow, living in harmony with the Tao, the quiet current that moves through all things. They call it Wu Wei, action without force, like a leaf drifting on water, carried by something wiser than thought. All these paths, so different on the surface, are pointing to the same direction, the end of the separate, seeking self. The story of me gently dissolves. The longing to become fades, and what's left is simple, open presence. But here's where Buddhism takes a unique turn, where some traditions speak of merging with the divine or realizing an absolute reality. Buddhism looks deeper into that very idea and asks, who or what are we merging with? And the answer it gives is silence. Not because there's nothing, but because there's no fixed thing, no ultimate God particle, only emptiness. But not emptiness as in nothingness, more like space, not the absence of life, but the condition that allows life to move freely. In Buddhism, this is called dependent origination. Everything exists because everything else exists. No piece stands alone. Your thoughts depend on your brain depends on your body on food, on sun, on time. And so everything is held together, not by a central core, but by an infinite web of relationship. This isn't cold or nihilistic. It's incredibly alive, because in that interbeing, in that radical openness, there's no need to become anything anymore. You already belong. You always did. Let's pause for a moment. Maybe you've been listening and a quiet question is starting to rise inside you. Can we really talk about enlightenment if we haven't experienced it ourselves? Isn't it all just theory until it happens? Isn't this like reading a recipe without ever tasting the food? And honestly, that's a beautiful question because it's not cynical, it's sincere. It's the kind of spiritual honesty the Buddha deeply respected. See, there's a difference between repeating words and speaking from a place of humble curiosity. We're not pretending to know in some final way. We're wondering together. We're opening the door, not to prove something, but to explore something timeless and deeply human. And here's the quiet truth. Sometimes we recognize something even if we can't explain it. Like when you hear a piece of music and tears come, but you don't know why. Or when someone speaks a truth that hits you right in the heart, even if your mind doesn't fully grasp it. That soft, inner yes, that's something real. That's a kind of knowing beyond thought. The Buddha never asked people to believe blindly. In fact, he said the opposite. Don't believe something just because I said it. Test it. See if it brings peace, if it brings freedom, if it helps reduce suffering. And maybe that's how we recognize authentic wisdom in others too. Not by whether they quote ancient texts, but by the way they live. Are they trying to impress you? Do they demand belief, loyalty, followers? Or do they move through life quietly, like a candle lighting other candles, never needing to prove they have the flame? Real teachers, the Buddha said, don't create dependency. They don't need attention. They don't argue to be right. They just point. They help. And then they step aside. Because the truth doesn't belong to anyone. And enlightenment, in its truest form, doesn't say, look at me. It says, look within you. So what is enlightenment, really? If it's not a reward, not a flash of light, not a supernatural state, then what is it? Here's something quiet and radical. Enlightenment isn't about getting somewhere. It's about realizing you were never lost. It's not the moment you become something greater. It's the moment you see through everything you thought you had to become. Like discovering the walls in your mind were made of paper, and behind them, there was always open sky. People often ask, is enlightenment permanent? But that question comes from the same habit that created the seeking in the first place. This idea that truth is something to grab, to hold, to keep. But nirvana, this deep peace, it's not bound by time. It doesn't begin, and it doesn't end. It's more like remembering the sky was always there, even when it was hidden by clouds. And what brings us closer to that remembering? Not spiritual highs, not exotic rituals, but the willingness to sit with what is, to face the parts of ourselves we've spent a lifetime avoiding. The fear, the grief, the longing, the confusion. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." It's not about escaping pain. It's about seeing it fully, without turning away. And in that seeing, something softens, something lets go. The Buddha compared it to a person who owns a priceless jewel, but has forgotten it's sewn into their pocket. They beg and search and cry, never realizing it was with them all along. Maybe that's us. Maybe that's what all the seeking has been about. Not to become something more, but to stop forgetting what we already are. And when the searching ends, when the story of "I must become" fades into silence, what remains isn't emptiness, it's peace, it's spaciousness, it's the home you thought you had to reach, but never actually left. The Buddha said, nothing happens, and everything changes. Nothing happens, because you were already whole. And everything changes, because you finally stopped believing you weren't. Enlightenment isn't a peak. It's not a goal to check off your list. It's the gentle realization that the door was never locked, and you were always free to walk through. And maybe, just maybe, this moment right here, right now, is already enough. After all this, maybe the real miracle of enlightenment is how simple it is. Not easy, but simple. No bright lights, no special effects, just the quiet falling away of everything false. There's no finish line, no final badge, no mountaintop where someone hands you a certificate and says, "Congratulations, you're awakened." Enlightenment isn't some rare treasure for monks in caves or mystics in silence. It's for anyone who's tired, tired of running, tired of pretending, tired of believing they're broken. It's for anyone who has whispered to themselves at 2 a.m., there has to be more than this. And here's the quiet answer. There isn't more. But what is goes deeper than you ever imagined. You don't need to chase the horizon. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to become someone better, more spiritual, more perfect. Because the truth is, you were never anything but awareness itself. The space where all experience rises and falls, like waves on the ocean. You are not the storm, you are the sky. And maybe the only thing standing between you and that realization is the belief that you need to do more to deserve it. But the door? It's been open the whole time. All you had to do was stop pushing on it long enough to notice. So if you're still seeking, that's okay. Even the seeking can become a teacher. But just know, what you're looking for is also looking for you, and it's not far away. It's here. It's now. It's you. If you've stayed with me this far, maybe a part of you is already sensing it. That stillness, that presence, that quiet place inside you that isn't chasing anymore. Maybe it's not something we arrive at someday, after years of meditating in the right posture or reading all the right books. Maybe it's something we gently remember, in the pause between breaths, in the warmth of sunlight on skin, in the silent moment after you stop asking, what's next? Because sometimes, the most sacred truths aren't shouted from mountaintops. They whisper. They whisper in the language of the everyday, the sound of leaves, the way your heart softens when you hold someone without needing to fix them, the way pain teaches us to stay instead of escape. This isn't about becoming untouchable, emotionless, above it all. It's about becoming so intimate with life that even your sorrow becomes sacred. Even your confusion is met with kindness, because now there's no one left inside trying to escape it. And maybe that's the clearest sign of awakening. You stop asking life to be different. You stop needing to get there, You just are. And the strangest part? That place you've been trying so hard to reach, that sense of peace, of arrival, of finally enough. It's been here, quietly waiting, like a friend who never left. The door was never locked. The light was never turned off. You were never broken. You were never behind. You just forgot. And now, you're remembering, not with your mind, but with your being. So if you're wondering, what happens when you reach enlightenment? Maybe the real answer is this: nothing happens, and everything changes. Maybe enlightenment isn't something we achieve, but something we stop running from. Maybe it's not about unlocking some ancient mystery, but simply noticing what's always been here, quietly waiting beneath the noise. We live in a world that teaches us to seek, to improve, to become, to rise. But rarely are we taught to pause, to soften, to let go. And maybe, just maybe, enlightenment is what's revealed when the seeking itself falls away. Not because we gave up, but because we saw there's nothing missing. You were never late. You were never behind. You were never unworthy of peace. And if there's one thing to take with you from this, let it be this: the truth doesn't belong to monks on mountains or gurus in distant lands. It lives here, in your breath, in this very moment, in the simple, undeniable miracle that you are aware. That's where home is. That's where the path begins, and ends, and begins again. So go gently, not toward a goal, but into the soft remembering that you are already exactly where you need to be.